Hello everyone, Strikoder here and welcome back to a new episode of Active Directory Hacking Lab. In this episode, we're gonna discover together how to use NetExec, which is a tool to enumerate SMB, to enumerate RDB, to enumerate WinRM. Let's check what do we have here. So we can enumerate SSH, WMI for SMB, MySQL, RDB, NFS, WinRM, FTP, LDAP, and so on. And each one of them has its own modules, so that's extremely great. This tool is, however, a fork from, let me check. So here we see NetExec, which is still maintainable. The last merge of a pull request was 2 days ago. And the old tool, NetExec versus CrackMapExec, you can use the CrackMapExec with legacy systems. I believe it's better than NetExec in few ways. I believe with LSASSy I had an issue before. I'm not sure if currently NetExec could deal as fine as CrackMapExec. However, NetExec is my current and forever tool that I use for enumeration. And you can even check my scripts over here. So there is no auth SMB, there is auth SMB, and over here all the scripts that I use, all the tools and the enumeration, I'm using NetExec because it's much better and it has far more modules. So let's get started. First of all, I would start with the flags. So we have verbose. If you had an issue, you can use verbose or debug, and log if you want to log something into the output. And then the 6 if you want to force the IPv6. However, I'm not gonna use those. What I'm gonna use is NXC. Then we provide the protocol that we are interested in. Let's start with SMB and 10.0.2.15, which is the IP of the DC IP of the domain controller of our lab. And over here, the user, I'm providing currently a privileged user, which is a local admin on the DC with his pass. So I run this and we see pound. So whenever you see pound, then you have high access, high privilege access, which means you are a local admin. Let's try with, I believe let me check, ASREP user. So it was password 1. Let me copy this and close this. So NXC, SMB, ASREP user, and the password is gonna be this. I don't think that this user has access. Let me check. So he has access, but we don't see pound because he has low privilege access. So I'm gonna save the echo or export all. Export all is just a function within my bash rc, which is export, the casual export in Kali, but is exporting to all panels in Tmux. So it's gonna be written in here as well. So export all, user2 equals asrep user, export all, pass equal or pass2 equals to password 1. So we see over here, they are written over here as well in all Tmux panels. So thus I can type, let me export all DC or just IP equals to 10.0.2.15, and now I can run, instead of this, NXC, and over here the IP. That feels much better, at least to me. So what can we enumerate? So with SMB currently, we see that we have bound. So with enumerating shares, we can see we have read, read write on all the disks that we have. Let's check from a non-high privilege user. We see we only have write access over the secrets share. And let's try and see if we can enumerate with guest or with anonymous. So status access denied. Let's type over here anonymous or whatever. We see we are not able to enumerate as well. We see status login failure. So we're moving on. I'm gonna enumerate through this user. The users, and we see all the users over here that we have: guest, Kerberos table ticket granted ticket, Kerberos ticket granted ticket, srep user, svc service SQL, DACL user, cert user, local admin, and over here we see even the descriptions. So whenever you're using the Bloodhound, you don't see the description, so that's why you need most of the time additional enumeration to get the description as well. I believe there are RID brute, if I'm not mistaken. So you get all the users with their RID respectively. So you see over here the SID type user. Here you see the group. Here you see the alias and so on. So most of the time you're gonna be interested in the after 1000 and the number 500 is the administrator. You may have the administrator going on with another name, so you would know by the RID. What you can enumerate as well, you can enumerate the password policy. So if you are doing some brute forcing or pass spraying, so over here we see the minimum password is 7, the history length is for 24, password age is already 41 days, and so on. So that's a great deal in IRL. What can we enumerate as well? We can enumerate logged on users. Most of the times I have logged. Maybe I have a typo. No, that's okay, but we couldn't enumerate that. So using the low privilege user, we could enumerate, but using the high privilege, we couldn't. So over here we see, wait, that is the administrator. Okay, so now it makes sense. Using the administrator, we could now enumerate the logged on users. We see the administrator and the machine. And let's try to enumerate further with Quinsta. Oops, so here we got an error. Object name not found. Okay, we're gonna skip that for now. So the comments that I showed you, I use them usually as non-authenticated user enumeration. So with guest or anonymous or whatsoever, I try to enumerate this stuff using non-authenticated user. What can we enumerate as well? We can move to LDAP, and with LDAP we can enumerate groups. And here we see all the groups within the Active Directory set. And what I really like, which many people miss, is using the labs. So I will explain briefly what -m means, but bear with me for now. So Currently we don't have lab solution, but whenever we have and there are passwords stored in there, there are several ways to get them, and the simplest way to get that is using the labs through LDAP. So keep that in your mind. So before going to the modules, what can we do with NXCA? So let's say we have, I'm gonna search for instance over here. Do we have any usernames? So we don't have any usernames. So let me enumerate the usernames. Users. And let's say I'm gonna copy this. Them file.txt. Then cat file.txt. And let me check if I catted that out. Nope, I'm gonna cat based on the space. Okay, that didn't work out. Let me check the file again. Okay. So maybe we need to get this. So maybe with AWK, I forgot -f, print, okay. So now we're getting the description, which is not what we want. Okay, let me then do that manually. I have, just I have over here a script which does all of that for you, but currently I'm doing that manually. So if I'm not mistaken, control space and V, and we can, oops, control space and V, not like that. Yes, and then number 6, delete. Again, control space V. Then number 4, delete. No, not like that. And not like that as well. Okay, that's better. And let me, so I have the file to user names.txt, cat usernames. So we have administrator, guest, ticket granted ticket, ASRP user, and so on. So let's say NXC, SMB, IB, and we have a password. For instance, the password that we got over here in the description, weak pass, but we don't know which user has this pass. So I give over here the input of usernames.txt, and the password I'm gonna provide weak pass. So let me check again. Weak pass 1. So weak pass 1. And we check which user of these has the password, and we found him. So it's the service SQL user. So as we can see here, it stopped with this, which is a bit sad because we want to test this password, maybe a default password. We want to test that with all the users available in the domain. So we try with continue on success. That's an extremely important flag in IRL, in real life, and in PMPT exam. So if you are prepping for the exam, here you go. In our case, the password is only for one user. Another flag which is extremely helpful and important for the PMPT and IRL, which is, I believe, local, if I'm not mistaken. Nah, I believe it was local auth then. Yep. So now we are not using the authentication within the domain, but as a local admin or a local user on that specific machine, which is the domain controller. So we see, even though we had access, but now it doesn't work. Let's try with our username and password. So pass user, and we see we don't even have access through the bound user. So if we remove the local auth, it's gonna use the domain access, which is bound. So bear in mind that local auth is a thing too. So maybe, let's say we enumerated for SMB. Let's try to enumerate for RDP. So we had access over SMB. Let's try using the credential stuffing over the RDP. Okay, RDP is a little bit slow with enumeration. Let's try WinRM. So we see the user that had access over the SMB. I believe it was the SQL. Yes. So it had access over the SMB, but it has no access over the WinRM. Let's try over, of course, because it's an admin, it's gonna have access over the SMB, over the WinRM, over the, oops, over the RDB. No. Why it does that to me? WinRM. So we see pound. Let's try RDB. And we should see pound as well. So it didn't run, maybe because the RDB is not enabled, but I believe you got the point. What can we enumerate as well? So we are finished with credentials stuffing, with pass spraying, I mean, and we are finished with the several protocols enumeration, and we are now left with the modules. So before entering the modules, there are few flags. Where are they? Let's try local. So they would show us, not with RDB. I'm gonna change to SMB. So there are these flags that they are not within the modules. For instance, let's try an interesting one. We've seen the continue on success. There is no brute force. And let's try, for instance, let's try NTDS. So you can dump the NTDS and get the hashes. So dumping the NTD can crash the DC on Windows 2019. Use the option user to dump specific users. Okay. And we see the hashes getting back to us as if we used secret dump, which is extremely helpful. We can as well try, I believe it was DPAPI. Let me check. So delegate NTDS DPAPI. So grab a coffee. Got 5 decrypted master keys, looting secrets, and that's extremely great. So how do you get the secrets, nxc database. You type help and you see the protocol workspace help. Let's type protocol help again. We can see okay, so protocol smb, I believe. Now we type help, so we see creds. Let's type creds. We see all the creds that we have got recently, the hashes. Let me type help again. We see DPAPI, and we don't see any secrets over here. That's okay. Maybe if we typed WCC, for instance, we see nothing over here as well. So yep, that's it. Let me exit the database again. So I just wanted you to know, before going into the modules, there are many stuff that you can try before going in. Be sure to use, for instance, the LSA is a great one as well. It dumps hashes and clear text password as well. So yep, that's it. Now let's move to modules. So using the modules, you provide -m, and if you don't know which module you're gonna use, you provide -l, and here are all the modules. So the low privilege user, for instance, our what our user was called, the ASREP user, can use these modules. For instance, GPP password, autologin, MS17, which is great. I didn't expect that. Or maybe that's already in my script. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm gonna add that. So Slinky, okay. SMB Ghost, that's great. Spider Plus, Spooler, if Spooler is enabled or not for Spooler attack. Zerologon, which is great. Let's try Zerologon. So it checks if it's vulnerable or not. So I'm gonna provide user2 pass2 -m 0 dash logon. No, without dash. And it checks, even though we have low privilege user, but it checks if it's vulnerable or not. Attack failed. Target is probably patched. Okay, that's okay. Let's try with the high privilege user. Maybe it gets more information. Or are we gonna get the same answer, which logically it should be the same? Yep. So most of the time, low privilege modules are not that great. However, the privilege modules are extremely helpful. For instance, DPAPI hash, which is almost the same as before, but here we see more hashes. You can dump both and compare the hashes. Firefox, it has been removed recently, unfortunately, but it was doing great. You can enumerate the DNS, impire RESTful API, get connections. Let's try another thing. For instance, here checking for IIS, we don't have IIS. Impersonate, we don't want to impersonate since we are the administrator himself. Install elevated, it checks for elevated, install elevated registry. Let's try that. So we are just discovering them. So it's disabled. Okay. Now we are going to the SASSy stuff. So let's try LSASSy. I really like LSASSy because it dumps literally all the stuff that you like and you actually want, which is in our case our hash. Okay, that's fine. Now we can try Notepad++, but I don't think we have anything interesting. Notepad. Yep, nothing interesting. And what can we do as well? So PowerShell history, that's extremely helpful. So in some cases, we see over here all the history that we used in PowerShell to create the users, to create all the passwords for all the users. We can just read the script and get over the domain entirely with all the users, with all the passwords. So that's extremely helpful. We can use the procdump as well to get the LSASSy using the procdump64 service. We can use, what can we use as well? We can use WDigest and Wi-Fi. So we don't have anything regarding the Wi-Fi, but that's great and extremely helpful to know. WDigest. Actually, is not specified. Okay. So regarding WDigest is to enable or disable WDigest as far as I remember. So it creates and deletes, which enable that or disable that. I'm not gonna play with that for now. What can we use as well? Of course, we can use GPP password. It's done spidering, but we haven't found anything. GPP autologin. I believe login. Okay. So we haven't done anything as well. Maybe with putty. Haven't got anything. Maybe NanoDump. So all of these are extremely helpful. We got the same hash again, which is, yeah, good to know that we got the same hash twice. Then it's still valid. And maybe with Registry Winlogon. So we see domain con, nice, default username. And we see the default domain name, which is pentest. We haven't got anything interesting. And last but not least, backup operator. So using that, we've done the sysvol, we've done, I believe, the hives, the system.hive, and what actually we dump? I believe the hives, and through them we've got all the hashes over here, including the DPAPI machine key. So these are the most critical and the most stuff that you really want regarding NXC. However, as I've shown you before, there are several protocols. Each protocol has its own modules. So maybe with FTP, there are stuff that you might need for a specific case or machine. So be sure always to check stuff regarding each modules. However, most of the time you're gonna deal with SMB modules and a bit with LDAP modules. That was it. Thank you guys for watching. Please, if you like the video, don't forget to like, share, make a comment if you have any question, and subscribe. See you next time.